Hey there, everybody. MilkmanAl here. Today I wanted to talk with you about my 3.15 Path of Exile Spectral Shield Throw Bleed Max Block Gladiator. This build is super awesome. It's really tanky, it's cheap to build, it's super easy to play. I love the play style, and I thought I was really cool when I thought it up at the beginning of the league after seeing the changes to the Spectral Shield Throw Jim. Turns out I'm not special. Everybody else is playing this build too, but I have my own little spin on it. And as a filthy casual player, I figured I had something to contribute that maybe the whales of the Path of Exile world don't. So here I am. We're going to talk about it. It's an awesome build. I recommend it. But before we get into it, I would greatly appreciate it if you enjoy this video. Drop me a like and a subscription here. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. I would greatly appreciate it. So, yeah, let's get right into it. All right, so here's the path of building for my build with the skill tree and all of the damage numbers. So clearly, as I said, this is a spectral shield throw build, and we're focused on bleeding damage primarily. So I chose to take this route through the tree here, pick up all of the block nodes down here. This is a glorious vanity jewel, so I can overleech with Immortal Ambition. That helps survivability a fair bit because you're going to be leeching a lot with all of the hits that you do with this build. So I basically just progressed through here, got all the physical damage nodes over here, as much life as I could, the block nodes here and here, and that's it. It's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot of fancy mechanics to this build. I decided kind of late game to go with cluster jewels because that's ultimately a huge damage boost for this build. And you'll find that in-game damage for this is on the okay side. It's not bad. As you can see here, I have about 800,000 damage with fairly unoptimized gear, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I am on the way to having another jewel, cluster jewel out here, to increase my damage, and I can place jewels here, and then there'll be another jewel slot for it to pump damage up a little bit. But clearly not the biggest numbers that, maybe you've seen in some other builds. It's still just fine for all content, and given how tanky the build is, you shouldn't have a whole lot of problem surviving through even in-game boss fights like Shaper, Maven, all of that sort of thing. One thing to keep in mind about the DPS, though, is that your uptime for DPS is excellent. So, unlike most builds, which may have a higher, flashier number here in Path of Building, you will actually be doing this DPS pretty reliably. So instead of having, 4 million damage where you're only actually dishing that damage out every couple seconds, with this build, you're going to be doing this 800,000 damage fairly consistently. So it evens out a bit. But again, like I said, the damage is not spectacular. Workable, but not spectacular. So before we get into the specifics of the skills, let's talk about sort of the overall picture that this build brings you. I've mentioned a couple things already. So let's do a pro-con list. So first, pros. Very tanky build. I have kind of mismanaged my points here and only have 156% life, but I still hardly ever die. With the max block, and this is actually more like 70, I think it's 72% with the Painforged node that gives you an extra 8% block if you've been hit recently, and you've basically always been hit, so you have that. So it'll be 72% block, really good life leech, then you have overleech, so you're constantly refilling your health bar. Max resists, of course, and then a fair amount of armor as well to reduce physical damage, and you got some endurance charges on top of that. So in addition to that, I've opted to use Kracian's gear, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, but that also further serves to reduce the physical damage that you take. We've got very tanky, very survivable. The clear is fantastic. Clear on Bleed Gladiators is already pretty good because of Gratuitous Violence, where everything explodes and does physical damage once you kill it. But with Spectral Shield Throw, you're basically flying projectiles all over the screen, which also contributes to your clear, and then all of those things blow up, and so you get some pretty impressive screen melting explosions. So the cons of this build, as I mentioned, the damage kind of caps out sort of low. I think realistically you could probably double this damage with more investment and better gear, better tree planning, essentially. But still, 1.5 million, 2 million DPS is not amazing in the grand scheme of things. Pretty good, but not amazing. It's also a very slow build. you know, there's not a whole lot of room for movement speed, as you can see over there. And in my case, with the gear choices that I've made, gearing is a little bit difficult because you need a lot of bonuses to dexterity on your gear, and I don't have a lot of free gear slots to get those with, so it sort of limited me in my choices. You clearly do not have to make the same choices that I did, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. So, skills. Let's look at skills. So, shield charge, first off. I use that to get around. It's my movement skill. It's a bit clunky. You catch on weird terrain features and stuff and, you know, get your shield charge cut short pretty frequently, but it's good enough. This is what I use to proc Fortify, as you can see, so it decreases how much damage I take. I also have Life Tap on here to try to keep Corrupting Fever up. It's sort of effective to do that, but it's better than nothing. So, Spectral Shield Throw, I have basically set up to do maximum bleed damage. The one thing that you should notice here is that Awakened Deadly Ailments will add a whole bunch of bleeding damage. I've chosen not to do that. Why? So, with this patch, Deadly Ailments does 80% less damage with hits. That's not a huge deal for most damage over time builds, but I have chosen to not use that because I want my leech to be as high as possible to improve my survivability and also help with my mana sustain. Because without leech, basically I'd be posed for mana. So here I just have some sort of random utility skills. I have cruelty here. I've kind of messed around with this. I'm not sure that I like it. I don't think that I do enough damage with hits to make this worthwhile. Though, I don't know. You can play with it and see what you like. Molten Shell is awesome because I have so much armor. It really prevents a whole lot of damage and helps survivability substantially. I have this on my left click, so basically I just refresh it as soon as the cooldown wears off. You know, maximize uptime. Enduring Cry I seldom use, but it's nice to have as kind of a panic button. War Banner is just sort of here. I got this as a quest reward and it's just kind of hanging out. But not super useful for this build at this point, but it's there, so I figured I'd mention it. Herald of Purity, I feel like, is underrated support skill for this build. The minions are really, really, really helpful to keep the fire off of you. Basically, they will tank for you pretty substantially, and it helps you to be even more durable because you're not taking all of the punishment that they absorb. Not to mention that it also multiplies how much damage your bleed explosions do, which is fantastic. So I have Enlighten, which I found, fortunately, linked to both this and Herald of Purity, so I can actually run all of my auras without just totally nuking my mana supply. Just mostly nuke it. So, Blood Rage for extra attack speed and extra leech. I have Dash in case I want to, like, teleport over gaps and stuff, because Shield Charge does not do that, and I had a free gem slot, so why not? Corrupting Fever for some extra DPS. I mostly use this for burst damage, because it's unreliable to keep up. I don't spend life for any skill except for Shield Charge. So this property where it refreshes after you spend a total of 210 life, I have to Shield Charge 4 or 5 times to refresh that, and that's not something I do super often. Maybe while I'm mapping, but in that case I don't really need the extra damage from Corrupting Fever. So like I said, I pretty much use this for like boss burst damage. Just open up the Corrupting Fever and stack some Corrupted Blood and hope that that's good enough. Rinse and repeat. Efficacy, I've had to leave at level 12 because I don't have enough int for this. Like I said, getting stat bonuses was a little bit tricky with my gear limitations. Aspect of the Crab. This is from Creation's Carapace. Just helps me absorb more physical damage and be tankier. It's good shit. That's how I get away with only having 156% life on a melee character. Vulnerability, I have that on a ring, and we will talk about gear here in just a second. You can definitely optimize this setup quite a bit more, but I kind of like showing you unoptimized rigs because that's how the majority of people play Path of Exile. It's how I play, and I want you to see that you don't have to have optimized gear and awesome equipment to make this build go, basically. So, let's talk gear. Okay, so I mentioned that this build is very cheap to make. The streamer RNG gods saw that I am a very powerful, popular, important streamer and decided to bestow upon me some kind of ridiculous gear towards the end of this character's life. I think I'm level 92 now, and I believe I didn't get this stuff till I was level 91, so I made it all the way through the game without these things that I'm about to show you. So, first off, Prismatic Eclipse. This is a great weapon for this build. Super cheap, get 3 green sockets on it, and it's an extra 36% attack speed. You will be very hard pressed to find anything better than this. A weapon with a whole bunch of like DPS boost to bleed is a lot more expensive. It's kind of hard to craft, and it might not actually result in more real DPS because of one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is Crimson Dance. So it's very easy for this build to stack 8 bleeds on enemies, but that's what you need to do to get your maximum DPS, right? So attack speed is a big deal for this build. And if you have a weapon that shows you a bigger number in Path of Building, that's assuming that it has those 8 bleed stacks on it. And if you don't have enough attack speed, it might be pretty unusual for you to actually get those 8 stacks, so your real DPS is going to be lower. So be careful of that. Even if Path of Building shows a damage increase for you, it might not be a real damage increase. So keep that in mind. So like I said, I decided to use Cracian's set. Here's my crown jewel, okay? I don't think any of these exist in the league, actually. It might be the only one. There are none available for trade. So the Spectral Shield Throw fires 5 additional shard projectiles is the best in slot enchantment for this build. I happened upon a easy Uber lab day and just decided to run it, and I got this in 1 try. So do not count on having this. Like I said, I've had this for a grand total of 1 level. The build was perfectly fine without it. Still great clear speed, fine single target damage, but this definitely does make a difference in your clear. It's a ridiculous enchantment that you should never count on having unless you're kind of pushing this build to the limit. Another thing that's sort of tough to come by is the Cracian's Carapace with 4 off-color sockets, right? I've got the 3 greens and the blue. I got lucky and found one of these on the trade site for 3.5x, I think. Oh yeah, and by the way, this is probably going to cost you 6x plus, so it's a pretty expensive piece of gear. So 3.5x for this. Also, I've only had this for 2 levels. Previously, I just used the highest armor chest piece I could find that also had some life and resists with, this gem socket configuration, gem color configuration. And then I used a belt that had aspect of the crab on it to give me that. So this was a huge upgrade for me. And I actually, this had basically bottom of the barrel rolls, and I used 2 divines on it and got the rolls that it has on it now. So went from terrible to pretty much top end in 2 divines, which was awesome. The gloves, kind of nice to give you a little bit of an extra damage bonus. It improves your bleed explosions and your bleeding. Because I have 15 crab barriers pretty routinely, and I get 3% damage increase per crab barrier. So an extra 45% damage from gloves, not too bad. The life regen is helpful, but not a huge deal. It's basically 1% life regen. And then gaining back up to your max level of crab barriers, obviously, is a good thing too, and that's a core part of the build. The boots, nice to not be stunned. I hardly ever get stunned since you block 3/4 of the hits you take anyway, but nice to have. Decent movement speed for boots, but the nicest thing about these 2 is that they're very cheap, and the helmet is very cheap too without the enchantment on it. So the other gear that I have, rings. This is pretty much just a vehicle for vulnerability. Not a really great ring, but I'm sort of beholden to the dex that it gives. So pretty much just a vulnerability ring with dexterity on it, and it happens to have some resists too, and I crafted life on it. Nothing real special there. It's a pretty cheap ring. Same deal here, just dexterity, life, resistances. The Amulet. So this is my basically sole source of intelligence, which you need for Unbound Ailments, and efficacy to a lesser extent. This is just kind of the bonus DPS, so you don't necessarily need that, but it's a good idea. This is basically the best that I could find that allowed me to get some life and resistances on it, and I put Soul Raker on it for mana leech to help my mana sustain, because Otherwise, this would be a huge pain in the ass, and I'd be totally reliant on enduring flasks to keep my mana up. And I did that for a while, and it really sucked. I do not recommend that. So, your weapon. I've chosen to go, instead of pure armor, I did a life and armor combo shield. And the reason I did that is I sacrifice a lot of flat life by using the creation set. Like, there's only percentage life here, there's life regen here, and the plus life here is okay. Other armor, you would probably have a percentage life in addition to the max life on this. So you actually do give up a fair bit of life making this gear choice. So if you are looking at higher end gear, you can definitely do better than this. But I thought this was kind of a cool thing to use creation set, so I went with it, and it works. It works. But for higher end gearing, you can definitely do better than this stuff. So anyway, shield has life, some minimal resistances, and armor. For cheap options, Lionized Remorse will easily carry you through the game. I got this shield very recently. I want to say late 80s, into my late 80s. I think it cost me an X. So this is, if you're a casual player on the more expensive side, this one cost me like 5C. And this has top rolls on it. 5 Chaos for more or less a low-end endgame shield. And Tatoosh's Span, this got me into the 60s. This is a huge amount of armor to have on a low-level shield. So if you can pick one of these up, it's a very common unique. It should be easy to acquire, and this will carry you, at least through the main game. If you can find a shield in your 50s or 60s or trade for one that has higher armor, that'll obviously be better, but this is going to do you just fine. So, by the way, I didn't mention this, but the reason I keep talking about armor, Spectral Shield Throw gives you a substantial physical damage bonus per 15 armor or evasion rating on your shield. So the more armor that you have on your shield, the more damage you do, which is why that's a desirable thing. So I've sacrificed damage, basically, to get more life. And that's sort of the theme of this build, is I just went balls to the wall defensive. And again, it seems to work pretty well. Belt, just the best I could find with life resist, and the armor is a bonus. Ideally, you'd want all of those mods on a Stygian Vice, but I'm poor. So this is the best I could do. Still a pretty good belt, I'm not complaining, but you can, again, upgrade pretty substantially from the gear that I have. Ideally, you want a Runic Hatchet for the extra 12% global physical damage. You'd also like it to be Warlord influenced and at least eye level 82, so that you can roll the increased physical damage over time that Warlord offers, and also roll damage multiplier over time as a suffix. I've been rolling this one with corroded and jagged fossils to increase my chance of both bleeding and physical modifiers, but you can also just throw this into Harvest and use physical crafts on it if you want to do that as well. I haven't had any luck yet, but I'm working on it. So that's the first piece. The second is to totally just drop the whole creations idea, get rid of all of these things, and basically replace them with high life and high resist items that also give you stat bonuses that you need. Gloves in particular can give you both increased damage over time and damage over time multiplier, so go for that if you can. You can get more life on your armor, like I mentioned. You can get more life and movement speed on your boots. You can also get increased physical damage taken on your helmet. If possible, get +1 to dexterity gems, because Spectral Shield throws dexterity gem, or physical damage gems on your amulet. You can also get damage over time multipliers on your amulet as well. Get a better vulnerability ring, because mine is not good. Belt, Stygian Vice with all the same mods, essentially. Shield is a huge one, because you, in that situation, would probably be able to sacrifice the life on it and just go pure armor, so that you get that extra flat physical damage. And then, last but not least, optimize your skill tree. So, if you were to go balls to the wall with Cluster Jewels, you'd probably want to spec out of some of these less important damage nodes, get more life, so kind of come around here, get these life nodes, and then get the higher value physical damage nodes in a Cluster Jewel. And also get your jewel slots, which I have not done. So those would all be big helps to optimize this build. if you like, and if you really power level this, you can also come over here and get Tireless to reduce the mana cost of your skills, just to help that much more with your mana sustain. I don't think you'll need that with a proper amount of leech, but if you do have enough leech, instead of anointing Soulraker, like I have, you can come down here and anoint Command of Steel for some extra blocking and extra attack damage. But one of the things that I like about this build a whole bunch is there's a lot of different ways that you can run it. Like I said, I chose the straight up defensive mechanism path, which allows me to get by into in-game with just 156% life, but you can always go blood magic. That'll result in, fewer auras and extra gadgets that you can use, but it also lets you maintain Corrupted Fever more easily. It also gives you more life overall, and mana sustain is a non-issue. The other thing that I thought about doing is going low life with Petrified Blood. Ultimately, that will probably improve your survivability, even though it does make you a little bit more susceptible to one-shots. With all of the regeneration that you get with this build and just the overall durability, that should help you out a lot. But again, that comes at the cost of some extra auras and mana reservation, and your mana sustain might suffer a little bit there. So there you have it, folks. That's my take on the Spectral Shield Throw Bleed Max Block Gladiator. It's an awesome build, solid from top to bottom. Maybe doesn't have the one-hit shaper damage that you're looking for at the very high end of things, but for people like me, casuals who don't have a ton of time to play, this is a rock-solid character that's really easy and enjoyable to play. I highly recommend it. Very much unlike my self-cast Forbidden Rite Occultist that I started the league with. That is the worst character I've ever played, and it's brutal and makes me want to cry. So don't do that. Do this. This is a great league starter. It's great, again, for beginners. It's really easy to understand. Nothing bad about this build, in my opinion. Go for it. So again, I totally recommend this build. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and I'll get back with you. I'm MilkmanAl. Again, if you like this video, please like and subscribe here. You can follow me on Twitch live, 8 to 10 p.m. Central on Wednesdays and Sundays. I'll be there. I'll be open to any questions that you have. Thanks again for watching. Have a good one. Happy hunting, Exile.